Hey, I'm Rhiannon and this is Travel Talking, the Travel Talk podcast. Travel Talk is the app that helps you connect with fellow travellers wherever you are in the world. We are the voice of real travellers discovering the world one country at a time, with a few guests joining us and an entire planet to cover.
Go your own way.
Travel Talk. We're like Tinder for travel without the fucking. Search for Travel Talk on the App Store. That's Travel Talk without the E. Go your own way.
Hey everyone and welcome to episode 6 of Travel Talking. This week we are going to speak to Emiliano Farias, who is a friend of mine I met 12 years ago when I was traveling in Thailand. Now, last episode we heard from Mitch and we talked about Call Me By Your Name and the idea of sometimes visiting places that have been made very popular by films. And I mentioned the beach. And, you know, I said in the episode that there is a beach in Thailand that has a very special significance for me. And in fact, it continued to do so over the years as I went back, and it changed over time. Now, it's not the most famous place that everyone knows from the beach, the movie. It's a slightly different place called Tonsai. Emiliano, welcome to the show.
Hello, Rhiannon. How are you?
I'm good. Now, you and I met on a bus in Thailand, right?
Yeah, we did. We were going from Bangkok to Koh Phi Phi, I think.
That's right. We were all strangers, and suddenly we were getting off the other side, and there was, an American and...
It was 2 Americans and 2 English. Yeah, 2 English girls, Johnny and Kelly, and then the 2 of us.
That's right. And we went to Phi Phi, and then we heard of this place called Raleigh, right?
Riley, I think. I don't know how
Riley,
you
yeah.
pronounce
For
it.
the life of me, I still don't know. And we got on a ferry, and the ferry dropped us in Riley on one side of the beach. And maybe you can explain what happened there.
Well, when was this? Like 12 years ago, we couldn't book ahead, remember?
That's right.
Yeah, there was no booking ahead of hostels, knowing what the place that you were landing at looked like. So we just started looking for a place to stay. And there was none, and there was none. And then someone told us, just follow that little road through the jungle and you'll end up somewhere where there's somewhere you can stay. It was basically a little bungalow in the middle of the jungle.
Yeah, we had to the water was coming up and we had to go through almost this secret kind of passage, because one side of the beach where we'd been delivered with the ferry was the high-end resort side
Very
of
expensive.
town. And we were just backpackers. And as you said, there was no way of knowing what was on the island, because it was also before a time of mobile phones and extensive internet. This is 2008?
Early 8, yeah.
Yeah.
April.
So we rocked up and we were like, oh, my God, are we going to have to sleep on the floor tonight? Because we couldn't get off this island either. And turned out, you know, based on some person that just said, go that way, we all kind of trekked through with our backpacks up a hill, and it was kind of hard, wasn't it, to get to that beach?
But that's the things you want to do when you're traveling like that.
Yeah. And when we got to the other side, there was barely anything on the beach, right?
Barely anyone on the beach. We're lucky we found that guy that sold us Thai tequila, remember?
Oh, yeah. We had a nice night drinking some very, very local alcohol.
Yeah.
Basically, we met there and then we hung out for a couple of weeks, and you just finished a working holiday visa in New Zealand, right?
I had another 2 months left, so I thought with the money I'd made, go to Southeast Asia. I was so close. And then, travel for 2 months, 2.5 weeks with you and that group. It was good times.
Yeah. And now, 12 years later, it's the second time we've seen each other, and our lives are totally different, right?
Very, very. I'm not a kid anymore, I don't think.
You were 20 when we met, right?
Yeah.
And I was 24.
We're pretty young.
But let's start at the beginning. I mean, Where are you from?
Argentina.
Right. And what part of Argentina?
I am from Cordoba, which, for those who don't know, is sort of in the center of Argentina. About 7, 8, 9 hour drive, depends how fast you drive from Buenos Aires.
And we've had quite a lot of Kiwis and Australians and British people on our show. You're actually our first Latino. Congratulations.
Thank you. Kind of a Kiwi myself as well.
Well, that's right, because you've now lived in New Zealand for how long?
Lived there for, it's gonna go close to 8 years now. Yeah. Since the first time I visited, and then went back home, back to New Zealand. But it's been a long time.
And that's actually what we're going to cover on the show. Last season, we did a moving to London episode and we outlined, what it means for people who are doing a working holiday visa in London and how maybe as a Kiwi or an Aussie or a South African, you pack up your life and suddenly start living here for 2 years. But of course, you've gone and done it as an Argentinian in New Zealand. And we're all about trying to share different perspectives on this show and also with our traveltalk.co website. So as an Argentinian, at the time, there probably wasn't that many Argentinians traveling, would you say?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, at that time, the people that traveled away from Argentina were the people that had money, mainly from, I have to say, Buenos Aires. But with the working holiday, when that became popular, a lot of Argentinians started emigrating or going to New Zealand. And a few years later, the one from Ireland and Australia opened up. So then you have all these Argentinians that can travel no matter, how much money they have.
Yeah, and New Zealand really had just opened up its doors to Argentinians to enable them to have working holiday visas, right?
I think so, maybe a couple of years before I actually went there, because these days, those visas, they vanish in 3 hours. Like the website is, you can't access it,
Oh, really?
Yeah, no shit. I helped a friend from Cordova, and while I was in New Zealand with 2 computers trying to log in and get her the visa. But back 12 years ago when I got it, it was 4 or 5 months after the visas had been issued, and there were still 400, 600 left.
Amazing. And what made you decide to go to New Zealand? Obviously, you could get a visa there, but so you're in Argentina and you were how old at the time?
19.
19. So it was very young, and had you left Argentina before?
Only when I was a kid. We lived in Chile for 6 years.
Right.
Yeah, I was 6 years old.
So you're 19 and you've never been outside of Chile or Argentina.
Yeah.
And who convinced you to go to New Zealand?
I don't think that was any convincing. My dad just said, hey, check this out. There's a visa for New Zealand. My friend's daughter's been there and she had a good time. I was like, okay, what's this visa? And I looked it up and I didn't know what New Zealand was. Yeah, I knew there was a little island somewhere near Australia, but I was like, man, that place, I'm going to go there. So that's how it started. My dad, he said, I'll give you the ticket. The rest is up to you.
Okay, so you got the ticket and then what? You landed in Auckland, was it?
I landed in Auckland at 5 o'clock in the morning, expected to be in the middle of town. How silly is that? You're landing in the airport. So I caught a bus, got there, it was dark, and I walked around and walked into a hostel, stayed there for 2 weeks.
Had you booked the hostel before you arrived?
No.
Wow.
I didn't even know what a hostel was, to be honest. If I have to give you more detail of that first few steps in Auckland city center, was this lonely backpacker very confidently walked across the street, went into an ATM and started getting money out. And I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. I'm going to ask him where he's staying. So I wait for him to get his money. I say, hey, bro, I just landed here. Where can I sleep? What's the deal? And then he told me about hostels. And that was me.
That's it. That's quite an impressive story and very brave, really, to leave your country and not even know what you would do when you landed.
Yeah, I don't know. It worked out, I guess. I never felt unsafe or anything. It was just like getting off at a different neighborhood. That's how I felt at the time. You're young, you don't know shit.
And that's actually the beauty of travel, because I did the same thing when I went to Argentina, actually. I'd just been told the name of a hostel. And at the time, you couldn't, as you said, book ahead. Things like Travel Talk, the app, weren't out there to help you find people that might be in that location before you go.
Exactly.
And I jumped off the plane and exactly that. I didn't even have any idea how to get from Buenos Aires airport into downtown. So, at the airport, I just asked how I do that. And then they said, oh, get on that bus. And I got on that bus and I knew the name and the address of the hostel. And yeah, I sort of rocked up and actually my luggage had been lost. So I rocked up to this hostel and Denise, a girl who I'm still friends with today, she saw me and I said, hey, do you have a bed? And she's like, yeah. And I ended up living in that hostel for 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's when we met. I'd obviously spent some time in Argentina. So immediately we warmed to each other, right?
Yeah, you spoke Spanish. I mean, we started talking and as soon as you knew I was from Argentina, and at that bus, we started speaking in Spanish. And then that's why Kelly popped her head over from the seats and started talking in Spanish with us.
Yeah. And that's how it goes when you're traveling, right?
Yeah.
You never quite have a plan. You're just on a bus and the next thing you know, you suddenly have a group of friends, which...
That you travel with for 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then someone comes and sees you 12 years later and stays in your house.
I know. Lucky me, eh?
But let's go back to New Zealand. So you've painted this picture for us. You're 19 years old. You've
Yeah.
finally found out what a hostel is,
Yeah.
which is quite useful given you're now in a totally different country.
Yep.
So you got to the hostel, and what happened next?
I was greeted by a Scotsman. Yeah, so you can imagine how that went. It was my first time actually speaking English with someone, and I had to like do a business transaction with a Scottish guy. I couldn't understand crap. I got my room though, and next thing was to find work because I could work, but I had no money.
And what were you planning on doing work-wise, or what did you go through in order to get a job?
I almost ended up at the fish market, but then this guy that was in the same room as me, he was a Kiwi from Wellington, I think, who was working, how do you call it? As a laborer, you know, with a laborer, they just take you like whatever they need every morning. And the next day I was up at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I was in a van with random people. And then I worked for 2 weeks like that. It was
Wow.
weird. Yeah. It was,
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. I mean, I knew I had no money, literally. So I had to do something. And other than sitting at the hostel doing nothing, I knew I wanted to work and I had to work. And I was outside. I was, talking to people, eating sandwiches and, just doing easy stuff. But after a month, I got a job doing dishes at a hotel in Auckland. And that was a really good experience. That's what got me into cooking. That's what I do now.
Right. And so I obviously know a little bit about you, but for the audience listening, so you went there and you just kind of graduated from high school, right? So it's not that you had a university degree or a particular skill set that you wanted to leverage, and you wanted money. So basically you're saying you got into cooking.
Yeah. Luckily, I got offered a job as a dishwasher in a kitchen. I really like that world. I like the environment. I like the people that you deal with and how basically it's a no bullshit situation. You're full of shit, you get kicked out. I mean, you got to work hard and you got to earn your place, no matter where in the kitchen you are. And I did that for the full extent of my working holiday visa. I mean, what was left of it. And I traveled around New Zealand like that. And then I went to Southeast Asia where I met you. And after that, I had to study to get my visa. I had to go into New Zealand. That's a long story, but I ended up getting my studies done in 2 years. And then I had a Kiwi girlfriend at the time. So the government was like, oh, well, you're dating one of us and you can cook and we need cooks. So we'll give you a visa. Now I got a passport.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of fast forward through a lot of stuff there, but you obviously worked in New Zealand, you stayed there a year, and you must have met a lot of locals, as you said. You maybe fell in love. But then you couldn't stay past the year, right?
Nah.
Because you wanted to, but they wouldn't let you, would they?
Nah, because the working holiday visa expires, and when it expires, you gotta go unless you have a work visa. I did try to get a work visa after working in Argentina, saving money, go back to New Zealand, but that didn't happen, obviously, because in the time I was in Argentina, I didn't study anything, so I got to New Zealand looking for a visa without any skills. Yeah.
And then you realized that you needed to come back with skills. So you went back to Argentina after the time in New Zealand, but you must have really wanted to go back to New Zealand then.
I loved it. It's a beautiful place. I am from Cordoba. We're a landlocked city, The closest beach we have is, I don't know, half a day's drive. So living in New Zealand by the water, and then everything is green. Everything is green. The people are chill. They're nice. They're a bit lazy sometimes.
Sorry, Kiwi.
Yeah, come on, you know it. It's very nice. It's very comfortable.
I could say the same about Aussies, to be fair.
Yeah? Okay. I'm going to get in trouble when I go home now.
We both are.
Yeah. But yeah, so and the fact that you had mountains and forests and rivers and beaches, it was just, everything was right there for you. And it was not crowded. I was in beaches that I'd only seen in like movies, but I was the only person there. And Russell, the Bay of Islands, it's a beautiful place. Beautiful place.
It is beautiful. And now you went back because you went and studied cooking to become a chef for 2 years in Argentina. And then you came back with this skill. And, I found it quite heartwarming how you told me you got off the plane and you didn't have skills, but you found a job. You were a dishwasher. You sort of started out at the bottom, which is hard to do. And then you went back this time and you were looking for a job as a chef, right?
Yeah, as a chef. And I think it was very quick. I think I might have sent 5 CVs, and 3 days later, someone called me to go for an interview. I ended up in Auckland City Center, 4th Street, talking to Yael Shohat. That woman, she can cook. She can cook. I started there at her restaurant Ima, and I worked there for 4 years. There was a point where I was a right hand man, very happy and proud of that, and I learned a lot about a lot of things.
You ended up running the kitchen, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, because I worked hard and I listened to her, because she was always there to teach you, if you were there to listen. And that was 4 years. Yeah, I'll never forget that time. It was really cool.
And during this time, you obviously would have gotten to know New Zealand and Auckland very well. So you sort of came in originally as a tourist and then you suddenly became an expat. Now, what changed in you during that time? And maybe explain to people who might want to do something similar, like what perhaps was the most important parts of that journey for you?
To find your place in the city. You had a place. You come from a place, in your city where you're born, where you're raised with your family. You go into a new city, as you say, as an expat. And my dad always said to me that it's all about the people. So yes, find a job, because you will need a job wherever it is that you go, unless you have a lot of money. And then find people, put yourself in situations that you like, that you enjoy, and then people that are doing the same, you'll meet them in those situations. That's something I learned very recently. Back then, I ended up making friends with some guys that play football, or soccer, as some people may call it. I cooked, so the people that were around me, they were, I don't know, kindred spirits in a way. Work hard, party hard. Yeah, you can still do that.
And obviously you had a local partner, so that would have probably helped ease you into the local culture and start to understand things that maybe wouldn't have been so obvious as a Argentinian coming into what was very much a Western culture, right?
Definitely. It was good. It was helpful. It was hard work, It was not easy. Like, I think I'm a pretty easygoing person, but like when you're in a relationship with someone from a different culture, and there's bigger differences in other cultures than Argentinian and Western, but it was still hard.
As someone who spent 8 years with a Colombian, I could agree, really. I mean, there's just a mismatch of cultures. And as much as you might care and really love each other, there's still different set of values, isn't there? And that's one of the things I personally love about traveling is that you kind of go with your own preconceived ideas of maybe what's right and wrong, and those ideas are affirmed by your reference group of back home, and suddenly you meet someone maybe from a different country like Argentina or Colombia, and you'll suddenly say, well, I'll do it this way. And you think, but that's wrong. And actually it's not wrong, is it? It's just a different approach to things.
Definitely. What's right, what's wrong. The values that you say, it's not that they're different, It's almost as if the rules were spoken in a different language, because they kind of are, and what's socially acceptable and what's not. And unfortunately, because of that, some people have had it hard,
Well, you didn't speak great English at the time, did you? So
Nah.
the English you're speaking today and you're very comfortable with that, at the time you'd arrived and you didn't speak the local language. I mean, what other things to you, if you're kind of helping, let's say, other people coming from Argentina, and obviously I think it might be a bit easier today because you've got the internet and there's more information out there, but what immediately shocked you or sort of was a surprise that you could maybe help alleviate for other people in the future?
You can trust New Zealanders.
That was a surprise.
Yeah.
You can or you can't?
You can.
Well,
I mean,
good.
you're always going to find someone trying to take advantage of you and whatnot. You'll sense it. You'll feel it right away. Kiwis are very helpful. They're very friendly creatures, so to say. When you go to becomes friends with someone in a more personal, intimate situation, social gatherings and whatnot, the thing becomes a little bit harder because there's a cultural difference. I always describe it as a bit of an ice wall, until they let you in, until you sort of melt that. In Argentina, at least in South America, I think is different. When you meet someone at a business meeting, you give them a kiss on the cheek. And in New Zealand, you don't do that. You just shake hands if you do. And when you say bye from a group, when you're like, okay, I'm leaving, you say bye. In Argentina, you kiss every single person.
I know, I remember. I found that really overwhelming, actually, especially when there was 10 people sitting down. I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I can get around to everybody.
Everyone will get up and kiss you back.
Yeah. But then you said New Zealanders are very friendly and that surprised you.
Yeah.
So you were kind of used
Because-
to like a local culture of your own where
Mm.
people had a bit of a wall up and suddenly you're in a totally new country and they welcomed you with open arms, you're saying.
Yeah, they did, but in their own way. In Argentina, that wall is kind of not there because once you speak the language and you all do the same thing. But when New Zealanders, they know you're not from there. So the welcoming is there, but you gotta earn it, you know? You gotta show them you're not an asshole.
Well, I think that just is applicable to life in general.
Yeah, true.
You know.
But I was 19 and that thing surprised me because in Argentina, you gotta be careful around people.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you found them warm. And what else more logistically? I mean, did you find it expensive? Did you find certain things worked so differently to what you thought was normal in Argentina?
Look, you gotta remember I was 19 and I never literally managed money. So it was a bit of a mess at first. Buy your food at a supermarket, cook it in the hostel. Don't eat out. Even if it's like, oh yeah, $3 for sushi. Oh yeah, McDonald's for $4. No. Those $4 and $3 can feed you 4 times what you're paying for that. I didn't know that, you know. But that's for someone who doesn't know this, what a hostel is, what all the things you have at a hostel that you can use to save money. It's not really expensive. You can walk around Auckland a lot, but public transport in Argentina, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. I think I got lost in my branches of the conversation and
Well,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I can appreciate that you're a different person today, right? You're now 32 years old and we're asking you a lot of questions about what it was like when you were 19. But
Yeah.
maybe it's easier to sort of move on because you've become a different person over that time. And I suppose the first impression that you had of New Zealand then probably evolved over time. And you now live in Nelson, is that right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do. After 6 years of living in Auckland, I decided I needed a break. You know, I needed, I don't know, more space for myself. Not because Auckland is a daunting, huge city that never stops like London, which is nothing wrong with that. But I needed more nature closer to me, I think, you know, because the people that I knew in Auckland, after I broke up with my girlfriend, I was single, and all the friendships that I had, they were like with set times. You know, it was hard to like get together after work or before work or in the weekends because I was a chef, so I was working the weekends and the evenings. And I was like, man, it feels like the city doesn't let me hang out with my mates. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go somewhere else for a bit for a head change.
You've been in Auckland for quite a long time as well,
6
hadn't
years.
you? Yeah.
Nelson was great. It was a great move, I think.
Because you're currently on a sort of round the world trip at the moment. This is the first time you've really been on a trip since we met, like back then, and then you stayed all that time in New Zealand, went home a bit. But
Yeah.
you've been doing quite a whirlwind tour this time yourself, right?
Yeah, I'm a rusty old traveler, if you want to call it that.
You've earned your stripes since I've last seen you, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
that's quite powerful, isn't it, for us to see the transition of who we were
Mm.
at the age of 20 and 24, and then suddenly seeing ourselves today at 32 and 36 and
Yeah.
acknowledging, we're at my place, you're staying with me, and we're just talking about all this stuff that's happened. And for me, that really captures what traveling can do for someone, right?
Yeah,
That
true.
we look back and we think, oh, we knew nothing. I mean, you've just taken us through how little you knew about life and that you didn't even know how to plan money. And
Yeah.
I of course didn't know what I suppose we would end up talking about, and I
Yeah,
wasn't
no.
sure what to expect because we didn't really chat much at all over the years.
No, not at all, really. And then one day you said, "Oh, you're coming over. Sweet, you have a room to stay. Awesome. Also, would you like to be on a podcast?" And I was like, "Okay, I think I can do that." Never done it before, but here
You're
we are.
doing a great job.
We were just talking, right?
Exactly, and that's what we do at home. So I said, why don't we give it a go here? But for me, it's really special to, I think, see the journey that you came on. And I was a bit more of an experienced traveler at that point, wasn't I? And I remember you were telling me all the things you were going to do. And I thought, I don't know how he's actually going to do all that. And I see you 12 years later and you've not just, conquered, if you like, a country, but you now live there. You obviously have a great grasp of English, but you went from being a dishwasher to essentially running a kitchen and, integrating into a completely foreign life. And
Yeah.
for all accounts, you want to live in New Zealand really for the foreseeable future, or at least you won't be heading back to Argentina sometime soon. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I will go home to visit, obviously, but I will live in New Zealand, maybe Australia for a year, save some money, and do another big trip which is something definitely in the cards. But New Zealand is where I want to live, I think. But no, I think I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about family? I mean, you're quite close. Latinos in general tend to have quite close relationships with their families. I'm not just saying we don't in the UK or Australia, but
Yeah.
having spent time in those countries, there's a bond there, isn't there, with family?
Yeah, I mean, it's family, it's blood. You don't choose it, and you love them regardless, and you do miss them. Like sometimes people ask me if I miss Argentina. I miss my people. That's my answer. My friends, my family, my friends, priorities. It's easy these days to keep in touch, a WhatsApp phone call, video call, Skype when they, like I used Skype for so long to ring their landlines because they didn't have a mobile phone or like a way to contact me with the internet. It's quite funny. And I don't visit as often as I would like or should, but at the same time, my dad always reassured me that it's okay. You're making your own life over there. You're the first generation Farias in New Zealand. Farias, see how what I do with my accent, with my with my own last name when I speak English.
Yeah,
Farias.
you specifically told me how it was pronounced, and
Yeah.
you just mispronounced your own name.
You know what they say? Someone once told me that when you speak a different language, your personality slightly changes.
Yeah.
If I'm speaking Spanish and I'm asking for a burrito, I'll say burrito. But if I'm speaking to someone in English, I'll say burrito so they understand.
It's true, actually. I always felt like I lost half of myself when I spoke Spanish because I struggled with sentimental words and obviously expressing how I was feeling. And, I felt like I came across so robotic in a second language. And I'm sure for you now, I mean, you're very warm and this conversation is flowing great, but I bet it took you time to feel comfortable and even understand what someone was saying to you so that you could reply sensibly, right?
Yeah, definitely. It took a lot of, I don't know, practice. I'm not gonna say work because it was more like a journey. I mean, I learned after the first week of like being shy about my English. I learned that anybody with any level of English can try to communicate it, and that's how you improve. Like I was hearing this Japanese guy and Brazilian girl have a full-on conversation in English. My first like 2 second, my third day in New Zealand, I think, and I could hear them speaking wrong grammatically. I was like, I know that's wrong. I was like, if they can speak like that, why can't I?
Well, that's right. Speaking
Yeah.
a second language is about making mistakes and not
Yeah.
being perfect. And
Exactly.
in general at Travel Talk, and whether you work for the company or, whether it's just who we speak to, the real travelers, we're all about, failing fast and not being afraid. Well, not being afraid to fail. I mean, no one loves the fact that they fail, but I think we are definitely against perfection. And the idea that you can't travel if you don't speak perfect English is quite ridiculous, right?
Yeah, like English aside, any language, any country that you go to, that you don't speak their language perfectly, but the sole fact that you try to learn, hello, how much is this, where is this, or I don't speak your language, that already warms people up. If you're a traveler in Turkey and you just approach someone and you start speaking to them in English, they're gonna be like, why am I supposed to know English? Why don't you ask me if I know English? It's a respectful thing to do, and it's nice.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, there's so much information out there now on the internet that obviously people do have inside their head that it's almost too much information that makes you feel a little bit intimidated. Whereas back in the day when there was no information, it was almost like, well, I'll go and try my luck. And I mean, what you've just told us is basically you arrived in New Zealand, you didn't know what a hostel was, you barely had any money, and you didn't speak the language. And then 12 years later, you are a model citizen there. I mean, you run businesses, you have your own house, you're traveling the world, and everyone can hear you speak English. So that's pretty motivational for people out there, right?
I wish I had my own house, but yeah,
But
of
you
course.
live in your own place.
I do.
These days, no one under the age of 50 can own their own house. I mean,
50? I
that's
thought it was
anywhere
like
across the
60.
world. Across the world, sorry. Yeah, but I think it's nice to just hear a different perspective because also it's fair to say when you grow up in a Western world, it's a bit easier, isn't it? And obviously for a period of time in Argentina and some of those countries in Latin America, there was a lot going on with the government, which meant that, why is it difficult for an Argentinian to come to New Zealand versus, say, someone from Germany? It's not fair, is it, that one person can get a visa and the other one can't? And so you obviously had it even tougher. And I know that the process that it took you to actually get permanent residency in New Zealand, I mean, that took how many years?
I had it easy and cheap compared to a lot of people. from the moment I decided I wanted to stay in New Zealand, and the moment I moved into New Zealand after I got my studies, maybe 3 years went by. And from the moment I went into New Zealand with my visa and my studies, I only had to wait a year and a half to 2 years to get my residency, and then another 5 to get my citizenship.
Still quite a long time, isn't it?
I have a friend who it took him 9 years of his life from the moment he got a work permit, because it's different than a work visa. And he went like 4 years through that stuff, and then another 5 years, and he was so happy when he got his passport.
Well, the question is, because
Sorry.
we're almost wrapping up, was it worth it?
Definitely. Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done it.
Well, that's exciting. So you're a great example of someone who's completely transformed their life, left their original country and gone to live in a totally different culture. And you're saying that you wouldn't change a thing.
Nah,
That's
not a
fantastic.
thing.
Well, thanks for the chat that we had today. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been an honor. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
No, and I hope anyone listening that is from perhaps a country that maybe is a bit more challenging to travel from initially than some countries out there, that they listen to this and they see that it's really down to you. If you think you can do something, you can certainly do it. It's usually, you find people along the way that connect with you, and you also are surprised sometimes how warm people can be to perfect strangers, right?
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm going to leave today's episode with a little bit of an excerpt that I took from a book called The Invisible Cities. And this book means something to me because it was given to me by an Argentinian girl when I was living in Buenos Aires. And kindly, I've had this book now for pretty much 12 years. I've traveled around with it. It's completely dog-eared. And I do speak Spanish, but it's very philosophical, so it's very difficult to read. And I finally pulled it out the other night and I said to Emiliano, what does this passage mean? Because she'd penciled it in. And I think it's just so fitting for today's podcast. So I'm going to read it. It's the book called The Invisible Cities, and it's written by Italo Calvino. And it's a story about Marco Polo describing his travels to Kublai Khan. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to read it as the translation that Emiliano gave me. I know he's a bit concerned it wasn't perfect.
Translation.
But don't worry, no one's even going to check this, I'm sure.
I'm sure a lot of people will.
But I think it just helps us end this episode and perhaps with the significance of what it truly means to travel. So basically, it's just a passage where Marco Polo and Kublai Khan. Well, was it Marco Polo thinking about his conversations with Kublai Khan, or the other way around?
Yeah, well, they used to converse, and Marco Polo would tell Kublai Khan about his travels, along the Silk Road, and they became friends to a point where they weren't actually having conversations; they were imagining the conversations they were having. So this bit you're about to read is Marco Polo imagining his answer to one of the imaginary questions that the Khan had asked him. It's quite
Okay,
funny.
about arriving to a new city.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Marco Polo says that thing he was always looking for, it was always right in front of him. Even when it was about the past, it was about a past that changed as his journey progressed. Because the traveller's past changes according to the itinerary he has fulfilled. Let's not refer to our closest past as the one that every day that passes adds another day, but to our most remote past. Upon arrival to a new city, the traveller encounters a past of his own that he no longer knew he had. The strangest of what you are not and what you do not possess awaits for you in strange places. It sort of sounds a little bit all over the place there, but it just spoke to me because when you do arrive to a place like you did, you don't know who you are or where you've been or where you're going.
Yeah.
And here we are now 12 years later, right?
I know. It's crazy. I don't know what to say about that because I could go on and on about arriving into new cities, not knowing where you're gonna be and where you've been and what you have and you don't have, and then you go through that city and then it's kind of in the past and you go into the new one and you already sort of have a way of dealing with the city as you come in. So the past that is just gone becomes your new sort of future. I don't know.
Well, that's the beauty of traveling, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and there's always adventures awaiting as you have ahead of you with the rest of your trip. So thanks so much for joining today. And everyone out there, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast and thanks for listening.
Travel Talk, the app to help you meet like-minded travellers nearby. Search for Travel Talk on the App Store. That's Travel Talk without the E. Go your own way.